The blood from Gabrielle Montgomery's split lip trickled down her chin as she stumbled through the dusty streets of Willow Creek, clutching her meager belongings wrapped in a faded cloth. The year was 1878, and the Montana Territory had shown her nothing but cruelty since her arrival 6 months prior. Her blue calico dress, once bright and cheerful, now hung in tatters around her thin frame, telling the silent story of a woman who had trusted the wrong man. The setting sun cast long shadows across the main street as townsfolk hurried to finish their business before nightfall. Gabrielle kept her gaze lowered, avoiding the judgmental stares that followed her. The bruises on her face were fresh, purple, and angry against her pale skin. She had finally escaped the saloon where Victor Holloway had kept her working to pay off her debt, a debt that seemed to grow no matter how many glasses she served or how many drunken pawings she endured. "Just need to get to the stagecoach," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the distant piano music spilling from the Silver Dollar Saloon. The eastbound stage would arrive tomorrow, and the few dollars she had managed to hide away in the lining of her boot would buy her passage back to St. Louis. There was nothing left for her here, no family, no friends, and certainly no future. As she rounded the corner toward the livery stable where she planned to beg for a place to sleep, Gabrielle collided with a solid wall of muscle. Strong hands steadied her before she could fall, but the unexpected contact sent a jolt of fear through her body. She recoiled instinctively, raising her arm to shield her face. "Whoa there, madam, I ain't gonna hurt you." The voice was deep but gentle, with a slight southern drawl that reminded her of home. Gabrielle lowered her arm just enough to peer at the stranger. He stood tall, at least 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, weathered face. His eyes, a striking hazel beneath the brim of a dust-covered Stetson, reflected concern rather than the predatory interest she had grown accustomed to seeing in men's gazes. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, attempting to step around him. "I wasn't watching where I was going." The man didn't move. Instead, his eyes narrowed as he took in her battered appearance. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question, and Gabrielle didn't answer. She clutched her bundle tighter and tried again to pass. "The name's Adam Callahan," he said, removing his hat and revealing thick chestnut hair that curled slightly at the ends. "I'm foreman at the Double C Ranch just north of town." He spoke slowly, as if to a frightened animal. "Looks like you could use some help, madam," Gabrielle laughed bitterly. "Help? In Willow Creek, I've had enough of the kind of help men offer around here." Adam's expression darkened. "Not all men are cut from the same cloth, madam. Some of us still remember what our mamas taught us about treating folks right." He gestured to her face. "Whoever did that to you deserves a rope, not another chance." Before Gabrielle could respond, shouts erupted from down the street. Victor's voice, slurred with whiskey but unmistakable, called her name. "There you are, you thieving whore. Think you can steal from me and run." Terror gripped Gabrielle's heart. Victor was the owner of the Silver Dollar and had powerful friends in town, including Sheriff Barton, who conveniently looked the other way whenever Victor's girls showed up with unexplained injuries. Adam's hand moved instinctively to the revolver at his hip. "This the fella who marked you up?" Gabrielle nodded mutely, her throat constricting with fear. In one fluid motion, Adam stepped in front of her, positioning himself as a human shield between Gabrielle and the approaching danger. "You'd best move along now, friend," he called out, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable threat. Victor, flanked by 2 of his regular patrons, stopped a few yards away. His face was flushed with alcohol and rage. "This ain't your business, cowboy. The woman works for me and she's taken what ain't hers. Looks to me like she's taken herself, which I reckon is hers by right," Adam replied evenly. Victor's hand hovered near his pistol. "She's got a debt to pay." "How much?" Adam asked simply. The question seemed to catch Victor off guard. "What? How much does she owe you? I'll pay it, right here, right now." Gabrielle tugged at Adam's sleeve. "No, please, you don't understand. He'll just say I owe more. There's no winning with him." Adam didn't take his eyes off Victor. "Madam, I've played enough poker to know when a man's bluffing, and this one's holding nothing but air." Victor's face contorted with fury. $50. She owes me $50 for room and board plus damages to my property. Without hesitation, Adam reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. He counted out 5 $10 gold pieces and tossed them into the dirt at Victor's feet. There. Debt paid in full with witnesses present. He nodded toward the small crowd that had gathered at the commotion. Now, I believe the lady is free to go wherever she pleases. Victor stared at the gold, greed battling with pride on his face. Finally, he bent to retrieve the coins. Fine, take the used-up trash. But don't come crying when she robs you blind, cowboy. Adam's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. One more thing, he said as Victor turned to leave. If I ever hear you've spoken about this lady in such terms again, or if you ever lay a hand on another woman, you'll answer to me. And I ain't as forgiving as the sheriff. When Victor and his companions had disappeared back into the saloon, Adam turned to Gabrielle. His expression softened immediately. Are you all right, madam? Gabrielle stared at him in bewilderment. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Adam replaced his hat and shrugged. My pa always said a man who stands by while others suffer ain't much of a man at all. He hesitated, then added, I've got a sister back in Tennessee. I'd hope someone would do the same for her if she was in trouble. For the first time in months, Gabrielle felt something other than fear or despair, a tentative flicker of hope. Still, experience had taught her harsh lessons about trusting strangers, especially men with kind eyes and honeyed words. I appreciate your intervention, Mr. Callahan, but I'll be fine on my own now. The stagecoach leaves tomorrow and I'll be on it. And where will you stay tonight? Victor and his friends know every boarding house in town. Gabrielle's silence answered his question. The Double C has a cook's cabin that's sitting empty, Adam offered. Old Hank moved on last month and we haven't found a replacement yet. It's small, but it's clean and has a good lock on the door. He must have seen the hesitation in her eyes because he quickly added, My sister-in-law, Martha, lives at the ranch too. She's the owner's wife. You'd be under her protection as much as mine. Gabrielle weighed her options. The livery stable would offer little protection if Victor decided to come looking for her, and she had no money for a hotel. The stagecoach wouldn't arrive until noon tomorrow, leaving her vulnerable for the night. Why should I trust you? She asked bluntly. Adam's lips curved into a slight smile. Good question. Truth is, you shouldn't trust any stranger outright, but I give you my word as a Callahan that you'll come to no harm under my watch. He paused. I don't know what you've been through, madam, but I can see it's been a hard road. Sometimes we all need a helping hand. Something in his steady gaze convinced her. Maybe it was foolish, but Gabrielle found herself nodding. Just for tonight, and I'll pay you back the $50 as soon as I can. Adam shook his head. Consider it a gift. Or better yet, consider it payment for Victor learning a valuable lesson about respect. He whistled, and a magnificent chestnut gelding trotted over from where it had been hitched outside the general store. This is Rusty, Adam said, patting the horse's neck. He's strong enough to carry us both out to the ranch. It's about 5 miles north. Gabrielle eyed the horse warily. It had been years since she'd ridden. I won't let you fall, Adam promised, seeming to read her thoughts. He mounted with practiced ease, then extended his hand down to her. You'll never carry this alone again, not while I'm around. The words struck something deep within Gabrielle, a chord that had long been silent. With trembling fingers, she reached up and placed her hand in his. The ride to the Double C ranch passed mostly in silence. Gabrielle sat sideways in front of Adam, his arms secure around her waist to keep her steady. The warmth of his body against her back should have made her uncomfortable, given her recent experiences, but instead, she found it oddly reassuring. He smelled of leather, wood smoke, and open prairie, nothing like the whiskey and cheap cologne that permeated Victor's saloon. As they crested a hill, the ranch came into view in the valley below. Even in the fading light, Gabrielle could make out a substantial main house, a large barn, bunkhouse, and several smaller cabins scattered about. A creek wound through the property, its banks lined with cottonwoods that swayed gently in the evening breeze. It's beautiful, she whispered, almost to herself. Adam's chest rumbled with a soft chuckle behind her. It's home, has been for the past 8 years, ever since my brother Charles bought the place. He was always the ambitious one in the family. And you? Gabrielle asked, surprising herself with the question. Me, I'm just a simple cowboy. Give me open sky, good horses, and honest work, and I'm content. They rode through a gate with Double C Ranch burned into a wooden arch overhead. As they approached the main house, a woman stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She was plump and pleasant-looking, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. Adam Callahan, you were supposed to be back hours ago with those supplies. She called, though her tone held more concern than anger. Her eyes widened when she noticed Gabrielle. Oh, you've brought company. Adam dismounted first, then gently helped Gabrielle down. Her legs felt wobbly after the long ride, and she swayed slightly. Adam's hand remained at her elbow, steadying her. Martha, this is Miss. He paused, realizing he hadn't asked her name. Gabrielle, she supplied softly. Gabrielle Montgomery. Miss Montgomery needs a safe place to stay tonight, Adam explained to Martha. I thought Hank's old cabin might do. Martha's kind eyes took in Gabrielle's bruised face and tattered dress. Understanding dawned in her expression, followed by a flash of anger that quickly softened to compassion. Of course, you poor dear. She came down the porch steps and approached Gabrielle, her movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. Are you hungry? I've just made a fresh batch of stew for supper. The mention of food made Gabrielle's stomach growl audibly. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten a proper meal. Victor's idea of feeding his girls was leftover scraps from the saloon kitchen. I wouldn't want to impose, she began, but Martha waved away her protest. Nonsense. There's always plenty to go around. Adam, why don't you show Miss Montgomery to the cabin so she can freshen up? I'll bring some hot water and clean towels, and I think I have a dress that might fit her, left by our niece when she visited last summer. Adam nodded. Yes, madam. He turned to Gabrielle. If that's all right with you, the kindness of these strangers was overwhelming after months of cruelty. Gabrielle felt tears welling in her eyes and blinked them back furiously. Thank you, she managed. The cook's cabin was small, but as Adam had promised, clean and sturdy. It consisted of a single room with a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs, a pot-bellied stove, and a few shelves. A window on each wall allowed for cross-ventilation, and colorful curtains made from flour sacks softened the rustic interior. It's not much, Adam said, lighting a lamp on the table. But the door has a good bolt, and no one will bother you here. Gabrielle ran her fingers over the simple quilt on the bed. It's perfect, she said sincerely. After the crowded, noisy quarters above the saloon, this quiet cabin seemed like a palace. Adam hesitated by the door. I'll leave you to settle in. Martha will be along shortly with those things she mentioned. He paused. Miss Montgomery, I don't mean to pry, but is there anyone we should send word to? Family worried about you? Gabrielle shook her head. No, my parents died of influenza 3 years ago. I came west because. She trailed off, the familiar pain of her naivete washing over her, because I believed in false promises. Adam's expression darkened briefly, but he kept his voice gentle. Well, you're safe now. Get some rest. The stagecoach doesn't leave until noon tomorrow, so there's no rush in the morning. After he left, Gabrielle sank onto the edge of the bed, overcome by the day's events. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to cry not the silent tears she had learned to shed so Victor wouldn't notice, but deep, body-racking sobs that released some of the pain and humiliation she had endured. That was how Martha found her a few minutes later, carrying a steaming bucket of water, clean towels, and a bundle of clothing. The older woman set down her burdens and sat beside Gabrielle, wrapping a motherly arm around her shoulders. There, child, let it out. Sometimes tears are the only way to wash away the past. Gabrielle hadn't been held like this since her mother died, and the simple human contact broke something open inside her. She cried until she had no tears left, while Martha rocked her gently and murmured soothing words. When she finally quieted, Martha helped her wash and change into a modest blue dress that fit surprisingly well. The older woman tended to Gabrielle's split lip and other visible injuries with a gentle touch, and a homemade salve that smelled of camphor and witch hazel. Adam told me a little of what happened in town, Martha said as she worked. That Victor Holloway is a disgrace to manhood. My husband Charles has had run-ins with him before, but the man has the sheriff in his pocket. He's dangerous, Gabrielle warned. I don't want to bring trouble to your family. Martha's round face set in determined lines. The double C can handle trouble, dear. We've faced down rustlers and renegades aplenty over the years. She patted Gabrielle's hand. Now let's get some food in you. You're thin as a rail. They walked together to the main house, where Adam and a tall, distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair were seated at a large oak table. The man rose when they entered. Charles, this is Miss Gabrielle Montgomery, Martha introduced. Miss Montgomery, my husband, Charles Callahan. Charles bowed slightly. Welcome to our home, Miss Montgomery. Adam has told me of your situation. Please know that you have friends here. Dinner was a simple but hearty affair: beef stew thick with vegetables, freshly baked bread, and apple pie for dessert. Gabrielle ate cautiously at first, then with increasing appetite as her empty stomach demanded nourishment. The conversation around her was easy and unforced, with no pointed questions about her past. Charles discussed cattle prices and plans for the upcoming roundup, while Martha talked about her vegetable garden and the quilting circle in town. Adam said little, but Gabrielle felt his gaze on her occasionally. There was nothing leering or presumptuous in his look, only concern and perhaps curiosity. When their eyes met across the table, he offered a small, reassuring smile that somehow eased the constant tension she had carried for months. After dinner, Martha insisted that Gabrielle take a cup of tea with honey to help her sleep. Adam walked her back to the cabin, carrying a lantern to light their way. Thank you, Gabrielle said when they reached the door, for everything. I don't know what would have happened if— No need to think on that, Adam interrupted gently. What matters is you're safe now. She studied his face in the lantern light, trying to understand this man who had stepped into her nightmare and offered help with no apparent ulterior motive. In her experience, men always wanted something in return. Why are you doing this? She asked again, needing to hear his answer once more. Adam was quiet for a moment. When I was 16, my mother was left alone with 4 children after my father died. A blizzard hit, and we were running out of food. A stranger passing through gave us provisions and helped repair our roof. When my mother tried to pay him, he just said, "Pass it on when you can. I guess I'm passing it on." The simple sincerity in his voice convinced Gabrielle more than any elaborate explanation could have. Good night, Mr. Callahan. Adam, he corrected. Sleep well, Miss Montgomery. Gabrielle, she offered in return. My friends call me Gabrielle. His smile deepened. Good night then, Gabrielle. She bolted the door behind her and prepared for bed, her mind whirling with the day's events. As she slipped between the clean sheets, exhaustion overtook her, and she fell into the first peaceful sleep she had known in months. Morning arrived with the crowing of a rooster and golden sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. For a moment, Gabrielle was disoriented, used to waking in the stuffy, dark room above the saloon. Then the events of the previous day rushed back, and she sat up, running a hand through her tangled hair. A soft knock at the door startled her. Miss Montgomery, it's Martha. I've brought breakfast. Gabrielle quickly smoothed down her hair and opened the door to find Martha holding a tray laden with food: eggs, bacon, biscuits, and a pot of coffee. Oh, you didn't have to. Nonsense, Martha said, bustling past her to set the tray on the table. Can't send you on your journey with an empty stomach. She paused, studying Gabrielle's face. Though you look better already, a good night's rest can work wonders. Gabrielle touched her cheek self-consciously. The swelling had gone down, but she knew the bruises would take days to fade. The stagecoach will be through town around noon, Martha continued, pouring coffee into a cup. Adam said he'd take you in when you're ready. Gabrielle nodded, though the thought of leaving brought an unexpected pang. This brief respite had reminded her of what it felt like to be treated with kindness and respect. Where will you go? Martha asked gently. St. Louis, I suppose. I have an old school friend there who might take me in until I find work. Gabrielle sipped the coffee, its rich warmth spreading through her. I was a teacher before I came west. Martha's eyebrows rose. A teacher? Well now, isn't that interesting? She glanced out the window, a speculative look crossing her face. Our little community has been trying to establish a proper school. The children are being taught by Mrs. Peterson now, but she's getting on in years and has her hands full with her grandchildren. Gabrielle shook her head quickly. I couldn't stay here. Victor Holloway has no say over who lives in Willow Creek, Martha said firmly. And the school would be here on ranch property. The neighboring families send their children over 3 days a week. The idea was tempting, almost painfully so. To teach again, to have meaningful work and a safe place to live. It seemed too good to be true, and in Gabrielle's experience, things that seemed too good to be true usually were. I don't know, she said hesitantly. I should probably still leave on today's stage. Martha patted her hand. Just something to consider, dear. Eat your breakfast while it's hot. We can talk more later. After Martha left, Gabrielle ate slowly, savoring each bite of the home-cooked meal. Her mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. The sensible course would be to leave Willow Creek and its painful memories behind. Yet the prospect of starting over in St. Louis with no money and only the distant hope of her friend's charity was daunting. She was still deep in thought when another knock came at the door. This time it was Adam, his hat in his hands. Morning, he greeted. Just wanted to check if you need anything before we head into town. Gabrielle gestured to the remains of her breakfast. Your sister-in-law has been very generous. I seem to have everything I need. Adam nodded, his eyes taking in the cabin as if assessing it. Martha mentioned to me that she told you about the school situation. She did. It's a good opportunity. The children need proper schooling and the position comes with room and board here at the ranch. He hesitated. But I understand if you want to put this place far behind you. Gabrielle studied him, noting the sincerity in his eyes and the careful way he kept his distance, respecting her space. Would the parents accept someone like me, a woman with my history? Adam's expression turned serious. The families around here judge folks on their character, not their circumstances. And your circumstances aren't your fault, Gabrielle. It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about the way it sounded in his deep voice made her heart flutter strangely. I don't know, she said again, feeling torn. It seems unwise to stay so close to him. Victor, Adam's jaw tightened. He won't bother you again, I give you my word on that. The conviction in his voice was unmistakable, and Gabrielle found herself believing him. Still, fear was a hard habit to break after months of living in constant anxiety. Would it be possible to think about it for a day or two, perhaps stay until the next stagecoach? Adam's face broke into a warm smile that transformed his features, softening the weather-roughened edges and lighting his hazel eyes. Of course, the stage comes through twice a week. Next one will be Thursday. Thank you, Gabrielle said, relief washing through her. A few more days of safety would give her time to consider her options carefully. No need for thanks. It's settled then. I'll let Martha know you'll be staying a bit longer. She'll be pleased she's already taken a shine to you. He put his hat back on, tipping it slightly. I'll be working with the horses this morning if you need anything. The corral's just past the barn. After he left, Gabrielle found herself drawn to the window, watching as Adam strode across the yard toward the barn. There was an ease to his movements, a quiet confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. So different from Victor's strutting bravado or the fumbling awkwardness of the saloon patrons. The next few days passed in a pleasant routine that gave Gabrielle time to heal, both physically and emotionally. Martha welcomed her help in the kitchen and garden, teaching her the rhythms of ranch life. Charles, though more reserved than his wife, was unfailingly courteous, often sharing stories of the early days of the Double C over dinner. And then there was Adam. He maintained a respectful distance, never pushing for conversation, but always ready with a kind word or a helping hand. Gabrielle found herself watching him when he wasn't looking the way he gentled nervous horses with patient words, how he treated the ranch hands with respect regardless of their station, the tenderness with which he cared for an orphaned calf. On Wednesday afternoon, Martha suggested they ride out to meet some of the families whose children would attend the school. "If you're still considering the position," she added carefully. Gabrielle hesitated. She had never been comfortable on horseback, but the thought of disappointing Martha was worse than her fear of riding. "I'd like that," she said finally. Martha beamed. "Wonderful. Adam can accompany us. He's the best rider on the ranch. You'll be perfectly safe with him." An hour later, Gabrielle found herself seated on a gentle mare named Daisy with Adam riding alongside on Rusty. Martha followed on her own horse, a placid gelding suited to her comfortable riding style. "Just relax," Adam advised, noticing Gabrielle's tense posture. "Daisy knows what she's doing, even if you don't." Gabrielle managed a small smile. "Is it that obvious I'm terrified?" "Only to someone who's spent his life around horses," he replied with a wink. "Here, hold the reins like this." He leaned over to adjust her grip, his calloused fingers briefly touching hers. The contact sent an unexpected warmth up her arm. They rode at an easy pace through rolling grasslands dotted with wildflowers. The spring air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of sage and new growth. Gabrielle gradually relaxed, beginning to enjoy the rhythm of the horse beneath her and the expansive beauty of the Montana landscape. "It's breathtaking," she said, taking in the snow-capped mountains in the distance. "It gets in your blood," Adam agreed. "I've never found anywhere else that feels quite like this." They crested a small hill, and a modest homestead came into view, a log cabin with a vegetable garden and a small barn. A woman was hanging laundry while 3 children played in the yard. "That's the Peterson place," Martha explained. "Sarah Peterson has 3 young ones. Emma's 8, Thomas is 6, and little Rebecca just turned 4. As they approached, the children spotted them and came running, calling out excited greetings. Mrs. Peterson shaded her eyes against the sun, then waved when she recognized the riders. "Martha." "What a lovely surprise," she called, coming to meet them. Introductions were made, and soon Gabrielle found herself sitting at the Petersons' kitchen table, drinking tea and discussing education with a passionate interest she hadn't felt in years. Sarah Peterson was eager to have her children properly schooled, and her enthusiasm was infectious. "Reading and figures are important, of course," she said, "but I also want them to learn about the wider world. Thomas asks so many questions about maps and distant places." "Geography was always one of my favorite subjects to teach," Gabrielle admitted. "There's something wonderful about helping children understand their place in the world." "You see," Martha said triumphantly, "it's a perfect match." They visited 2 more families that afternoon: the Hansons, with their twin boys and teenage daughter, and the Wilsons, whose 4 children ranged in age from 5 to 12. Both families welcomed Gabrielle warmly, showing none of the judgment or suspicion she had feared. By the time they returned to the Double C, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Gabrielle's muscles ached from the unaccustomed riding, but her mind was clearer than it had been in months. "I'll do it," she told Martha and Charles over dinner that evening. "I'll stay and teach the school if you'll have me." Martha clapped her hands in delight. "Wonderful, we can convert the old bunkhouse into a proper schoolroom. It's not being used now that the new one is built." Charles nodded his approval. "We'll need to order some books and supplies from Helena." "I'll write to my business associate there tomorrow." "And you'll continue to stay in Hank's cabin, of course," Martha added. "It's close enough to the main house for company, but private enough for your own space." Only Adam remained quiet, though Gabrielle thought she detected a pleased smile beneath his typically reserved expression. Later, as Adam walked her back to the cabin, as had become their evening ritual, he finally spoke. "I'm glad you're staying." The simple statement, delivered in his straightforward way, warmed Gabrielle more than any elaborate praise could have. "I am too," she replied softly, "though I'm still a bit afraid." They stopped outside her door, the moonlight casting gentle shadows across the yard. Adam turned to face her, his expression serious. "Fear's not always a bad thing. It can keep you alert, make you cautious when caution's warranted." He paused. "But don't let it stop you from living, Gabrielle. You've got too much to offer to let one evil man steal your future." His words struck a chord deep within her. For months, fear had been her constant companion, dictating her every move and thought. The idea of setting it aside, even partially, was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Thank you for understanding," she said. "Not many would." Adam shrugged. "I've known my share of hard times, nothing like what you faced, but enough to learn that judgment comes easy to those who have never been tested." Impulsively, Gabrielle reached out and squeezed his hand. "Good night, Adam." His fingers curled gently around hers for a brief moment. "Sleep well, Gabrielle." As she prepared for bed that night, Gabrielle felt a strange mixture of emotions: nervousness about her new role, lingering fear of Victor's potential retaliation, but also a growing sense of possibility that had been absent from her life for too long. And underlying it all was a warm awareness of Adam Callahan, his quiet strength, his unwavering kindness, and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity as preparations for the school moved forward. The old bunkhouse was cleaned and renovated, with new windows installed to let in more light and walls whitewashed until they gleamed. Charles ordered slates, chalk, books, and maps from Helena, while Martha and Gabrielle sewed curtains and cushions to make the space more inviting. Word spread through the community, and soon other families were inquiring about sending their children. By the time the school was ready to open, Gabrielle had 15 students enrolled, ranging in age from 4 to 16. Throughout it all, Adam was a steady presence, helping with the heavy work of renovating the schoolhouse, offering quiet encouragement when Gabrielle's confidence faltered, and ensuring that she felt safe and protected. He never mentioned Victor, but Gabrielle noticed that he or one of the trusted ranch hands always accompanied her on the rare occasions she needed to go into town. The school opened on a bright Monday in early May. Gabrielle stood at the door of the converted bunkhouse, greeting each child with a warm smile as parents delivered them on horseback or in wagons. Martha had helped her sew a new dress for the occasion, a pretty green calico that complemented her auburn hair and brought out the emerald in her eyes. "You look like a proper schoolmarm," Adam teased gently as he delivered a blackboard he had mounted on the wall that morning. "Is that a compliment, Mr. Callahan?" Gabrielle asked, surprising herself with the playful tone. Adam's eyes sparkled with humor. "Most definitely, Miss Montgomery." He tipped his hat. "I'll leave you to your scholars now. Good luck today." As the children settled into their seats, their faces eager and curious, Gabrielle felt a surge of purpose that had been missing from her life for too long. This was where she belonged, not cowering in fear or running from the past, but building something meaningful for the future. "Good morning, children," she began, her voice strong and clear. "Welcome to our new school. I'm Miss Montgomery, and I'm very excited to begin our journey of learning together." The first day was exhausting but exhilarating. The children were at various levels of education. Some could barely recognize their letters, while others were ready for more advanced studies. Gabrielle assessed each one carefully, creating groups based on ability rather than age, and began to develop a plan for the weeks ahead. When the last child had been collected at the end of the day, Gabrielle sank into her chair, both drained and elated. She was so absorbed in reviewing her notes that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until Adam cleared his throat from the doorway. "Successful first day?" he asked, holding out a canteen of cool water. Gabrielle accepted it gratefully. "Very. They're wonderful children, eager to learn and full of questions." "Their teacher seems pretty wonderful too," Adam said, his gaze holding hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Martha sent me to tell you that dinner will be ready soon. She's made a special meal to celebrate your first day." As they walked toward the main house together, Adam asked thoughtful questions about the children and her teaching methods. His genuine interest touched Gabrielle, who had grown used to men dismissing women's work like teaching as unimportant. "You'd make a good teacher yourself," she observed. "You have the patience for it," Adam chuckled. "Maybe with horses, but I'm not sure I have your gift with children. I've seen how they look at you like you've opened a door they didn't even know was there." The compliment warmed her through. It's the best feeling in the world, watching a child grasp something new. They had reached the porch steps, but Adam paused before going in. "Gabrielle," he said, his voice lower than usual, "I was wondering if you might like to ride out to Coyote Bluff with me on Saturday. The wildflowers are at their peak right now, and the view of the valley is something special." Gabrielle felt a flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. Was he asking to court her? The possibility both thrilled and frightened her. Since her arrival at the Double C, Adam had been unfailingly kind and respectful, but he had never indicated any romantic interest. "I'd like that," she said softly. Adam's face broke into that transformative smile that never failed to quicken her pulse. "Good, we can pack a picnic lunch." Martha's knowing look when they entered the dining room suggested that Adam's invitation hadn't been his idea alone. The older woman had been dropping increasingly unsubtle hints about what a fine man her brother-in-law was and how Gabrielle's presence had brought him out of his shell. The next few days passed in a pleasant routine of teaching, helping Martha with household tasks, and preparing for Saturday's outing. Gabrielle found herself watching the clock on Friday afternoon, eager for the school day to end so she could wash her hair and decide what to wear the next day. Saturday dawned clear and mild, with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of spring blossoms. Gabrielle chose her blue dress, the nicest one she owned thanks to Martha's generous gifts, and braided her hair in a coronet around her head, the way her mother had taught her for special occasions. Adam was waiting by the corral when she approached, looking handsome in a clean shirt and his best denim trousers. He'd even polished his boots, she noticed with a smile. "You look lovely," he said simply, his admiring gaze making her cheeks warm. "Thank you." "You clean up rather well yourself, Cowboy." Adam laughed, a rich sound that Gabrielle had come to treasure for its rarity. "Martha's influence. She threatened to dump the washtub over my head if I didn't make an effort." He gestured to the horses he had readied. "Shall we?" The ride to Coyote Bluff took them through meadows awash with wildflowers, lupines, Indian paintbrush, and black-eyed Susans creating a riot of color against the green grass. Adam pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the land and its history, his deep love for this country evident in every word. "My brother saw the potential here right away," he explained as they climbed higher. "The valley has good water, sheltered grazing for winter, and enough open range for summer pasture. Charles always had the business mind in the family." "And what did you see?" Gabrielle asked, curious about this man who revealed himself so gradually, like pages in a book turned one by one. Adam considered the question. "Freedom, I suppose, room to breathe. After the war, everything back east felt too crowded, too confined with memories." "You fought in the war." Gabrielle hadn't considered his age before, but it made sense. Adam carried himself with the quiet vigilance of a man who had seen combat. He nodded. "Confederate Army, though I had no love for the cause. In Tennessee, you didn't get much choice. I was 16 when I enlisted, 20 when it ended." His expression grew distant. "Saw things no boy should see." "Did things I wish I could forget." Gabrielle understood suddenly why he had responded so strongly to her situation. Adam Callahan knew what it was to carry scars that didn't show on the surface. "Is that why you came west?" she asked gently. "Partly. Mostly I followed Charles. He had a wife and baby on the way, big dreams and the determination to make them real. I just had nightmares and restlessness." Adam shook his head as if to dispel the somber mood. "But that was a lifetime ago. Here we are." They had reached the top of the bluff, and the view stole Gabrielle's breath. The valley spread below them in a patchwork of greens and golds, with the silver ribbon of the creek winding through it. The Double C buildings looked like a child's toys from this height, and beyond them the mountains rose in majestic splendor, their snow-capped peaks gleaming in the sun. "Oh, Adam," she breathed, "it's magnificent." He helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. The touch sent warmth spiraling through her body, and Gabrielle found herself reluctant to step away. They spread a blanket in a sheltered spot with the best view, and Adam unpacked the picnic Martha had prepared: fried chicken, fresh bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of lemonade. They ate in comfortable conversation, sharing stories of their childhoods and dreams. "I always wanted to travel," Gabrielle admitted as they finished the meal. "To see the great cities New York, Boston, even London or Paris." "You still can," Adam said. "Life's long and you're just beginning yours." Gabrielle smiled wistfully. "Perhaps, though my dreams have simplified somewhat. Now I'd settle for a home, work that matters, and people who care about me." "You have that already," Adam said quietly. "The Double C is your home for as long as you want it. The school matters more than you know. Those children are the future of this territory, and as for people who care." He reached across the blanket and took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "I care, Gabrielle, more than I probably should, given how little time we've known each other." Her heart pounded against her ribs. "Time isn't always the best measure," she said softly. "Some people can know each other for years and remain strangers. Others," she hesitated, then gathered her courage, "others connect more deeply in weeks." Adam's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, sending shivers up her arm. "When I saw you that first day in town, something in me recognized something in you. I can't explain it better than that." "I was afraid," Gabrielle confessed. "Not of you specifically, but of trusting anyone again. I've made such terrible mistakes in judgment." "Trusting isn't a mistake," Adam said firmly. "The mistake belongs to those who break that trust." He moved closer, his eyes searching hers. "I would never hurt you, Gabrielle, not intentionally, not ever." "I believe you," she whispered, and realized it was true. In the short time she had known him, Adam had proven himself honorable in both word and deed. His gaze dropped to her lips, and Gabrielle felt a rush of anticipation. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Adam leaned forward. His lips touched hers in a kiss so gentle, it was barely there a question rather than a demand. Gabrielle answered by leaning into the kiss, her hand rising to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. Adam's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, tender but with an underlying current of passion that made her dizzy. When they finally parted, both breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since the day you agreed to stay," he admitted. Gabrielle laughed softly. "And I've been hoping you would." They spent the afternoon on the bluff, talking, sharing occasional kisses, and simply enjoying the beauty around them and the newfound connection between them. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Adam reluctantly suggested they head back. "Martha will send out a search party if we're not home by supper," he said with a smile. The ride back was different, charged with a sweet awareness that hadn't been there before. They took their time, stopping occasionally to admire a particularly beautiful view or to exchange a brief kiss. As they approached the ranch, however, Gabrielle noticed Adam growing tense, his posture straightening as he scanned the buildings below. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice tight. "There are too many horses at the hitching post." Gabrielle followed his gaze and saw that he was right. At least 5 unfamiliar horses were tied outside the main house, and a group of men stood on the porch. "Stay behind me," Adam instructed as they rode down the slope. His right hand moved to rest near his holstered revolver. As they drew closer, Gabrielle recognized Sheriff Barton's distinctive tall figure among the men. Her stomach clenched with fear. Had Victor convinced the sheriff to arrest her on some trumped-up charge? Charles emerged from the house and spotted them, raising a hand in greeting that seemed designed to reassure. Adam relaxed slightly but kept Gabrielle behind him as they approached the porch. "Adam," Charles called, "Sheriff Barton has some news I think you and Miss Montgomery should hear." They dismounted and Adam helped Gabrielle up the porch steps, his hand protectively at the small of her back. Sheriff Barton touched the brim of his hat in greeting. "Miss Montgomery, Callahan." "Sheriff," Adam acknowledged coolly, "what brings you out to the Double C?" Barton shifted uncomfortably. "Got some news about Victor Holloway. Figured you'd want to know given the circumstances." Gabrielle tensed, pressing closer to Adam's side. "What about him?" "He's dead," Barton said bluntly. "Shot in a dispute over a card game last night. Accused a traveler of cheating, pulled his gun, but the stranger was faster." The news hit Gabrielle like a physical blow. Dead. Victor was dead, the man who had haunted her nightmares, whose shadow had loomed over every moment of peace she'd found at the Double C, was gone. The shooter. Adam asked, his arm slipping around Gabrielle's waist to steady her, cleared of any wrongdoing. 3 witnesses swore Holloway drew first. Stranger was just defending himself. Barton looked directly at Gabrielle for the first time. Thought you should know you don't have to be looking over your shoulder anymore, Miss Montgomery. Thank you for coming all this way to tell us, Charles said, clearly dismissing the sheriff. Barton nodded, replaced his hat, and signaled to his deputies. As they mounted up to leave, he paused beside Gabrielle. For what it's worth, miss, I'm sorry about what happened to you at the Silver Dollar. I should have stepped in sooner. She nodded, unable to find words for the tumult of emotions coursing through her. Relief, shock, a strange grief not for Victor himself, but for all that his cruelty had cost her. They swirled together like leaves in a whirlwind. Adam led her to a chair on the porch, his concerned gaze scanning her face. Are you all right? I don't know, she answered honestly. I should feel relieved, and I do, but… She trailed off, struggling to articulate the complex emotions. But it doesn't undo what happened, Adam finished for her. Doesn't heal the harm he caused. Gabrielle nodded, grateful for his understanding. Exactly. And I never wished him dead, despite everything. That feels like carrying his darkness inside me, and I don't want that. Adam knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. You're not carrying his darkness. That reaction, that empathy even for someone who hurt you, that's your light, Gabrielle. That's who you are. Martha appeared with a cup of tea laced with honey and whiskey. Drink this, dear. It'll steady your nerves. As the golden liquid warmed her from within, Gabrielle gradually processed the implications of Victor's death. She was truly free now, free from fear, free from the shadow that had hung over her new beginning at the Double C. I think I'd like to go to my cabin, she said after finishing the tea. I need some time to think. Of course, Martha said. I'll bring your supper over later. Adam walked with her, maintaining a respectful silence that Gabrielle appreciated. At her door, he hesitated. Would you prefer to be alone, or would company help? The question, and the way he asked it, giving her the choice rather than assuming, reinforced what Gabrielle already knew about this man. Adam Callahan respected her autonomy above his own desires. Stay, she said softly, just for a while. They sat together on the small bench outside the cabin, watching as the sunset painted the sky in vivid hues. Adam didn't press her to talk, content to offer his presence as comfort. When Gabrielle finally spoke, her voice was steady. I came west because a man named James Thornton wrote me beautiful letters after seeing my advertisement in a matrimonial newspaper. He described himself as a successful businessman in a growing town, looking for an educated wife to help build a life in the West. She gave a bitter laugh. When I arrived in Willow Creek, there was no James Thornton. Only Victor Holloway, who said James had sent him to collect me. I was so naive, so trusting. Adam's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her continue. He took my trunk with all my possessions, saying he'd deliver it to James's house. Instead, he brought me to the Silver Dollar, told me James had changed his mind, but that I owed him for the stagecoach fare he'd paid. When I couldn't pay, he said I could work it off serving drinks. Gabrielle stared at her hands. At first, it was just that. Then he started adding charges: room and board, broken glasses, fines for imagined offenses. The debt grew instead of shrinking, and soon he was suggesting other ways I could earn money. Adam's hand covered hers, warm and steady. You don't have to tell me this if it's too painful. I want you to know, Gabrielle said firmly. I want someone to know the truth of what happened. I refused those other ways, and that's when the beating started. He was careful, though never marked my face until that last time when he was drunk and angry that I'd hidden money from him. You escaped, Adam reminded her gently. You survived. That takes incredible courage. Gabrielle turned to face him, needing him to understand. I'm not the same person I was before all this. That naive, trusting girl is gone. I don't know if I can ever be whole again. Adam's eyes held hers, full of a tenderness that made her throat tight with emotion. You are whole, Gabrielle, changed by experience, yes, but not diminished by it. I see your strength, your kindness with the children, your capacity for joy despite everything you've endured. That's wholeness to me." Tears filled her eyes at his words. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "I don't," he admitted with a small smile. "Most times I'm fumbling in the dark, hoping I don't step wrong, but with you, I just say what's in my heart." Gabrielle leaned against him, and his arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. They sat that way until the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the evening sky. "I should let you rest," Adam said eventually, reluctance clear in his voice. "Thank you for today," Gabrielle said. "For the picnic, for everything." Adam stood, then bent to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Sleep well, Gabrielle, tomorrow's a new day." As spring blossomed into summer, Gabrielle's life settled into a rhythm that brought increasing happiness. The school thrived under her guidance, with more families sending their children as word spread of her teaching skills. Her relationship with Adam deepened gradually, built on mutual respect and growing affection. True to his nature, Adam courted her with thoughtful gestures rather than grand displays. Wildflowers left on her desk in the schoolhouse, a handcrafted bookshelf for her growing collection of books, quiet walks in the evening when the day's work was done. Each Sunday, weather permitting, they rode out to explore some new corner of the ranch's vast acreage, packing a picnic lunch and sometimes not returning until the stars began to appear. Martha watched their courtship with undisguised approval, often finding reasons to leave them alone together. Charles, more reserved but equally supportive, began including Gabrielle in discussions about the ranch's future, treating her as family rather than an employee. In late June, Adam took Gabrielle to a special place he had discovered years before, a small, hidden valley where a natural hot spring created a warm pool surrounded by rocks and sheltered by cottonwood trees. They sat with their feet in the water, talking about dreams and possibilities. "I've been thinking," Adam said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "about building a house." Gabrielle looked at him in surprise. "A house? Where?" "There's a nice spot about a half-mile east of the main house on that rise that overlooks the creek. Good water nearby, sheltered from the north wind by that stand of pines." He stared at the rippling water, not meeting her eyes. "It would have a proper parlor for entertaining, a study for grading papers, maybe 3 bedrooms for a family someday." The implication of his words made Gabrielle's heart race. "Adam Callahan, are you asking me something important in a very roundabout way?" That brought his gaze back to hers, a mixture of hope and vulnerability in his expression that made her want to gather him close. "I'm not doing this very well, am I?" Gabrielle smiled. "You're doing fine. Please continue." Adam took a deep breath. "Gabrielle Montgomery, I love you. I think I started falling in love with you that first day in town, when you stood there bruised but unbroken, with more courage than folks twice your size. Every day since has only confirmed what my heart knew right away, that you're the woman I want to spend my life with." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it, he withdrew a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "This was my mother's," he said, holding it out to her. "I'd be honored if you'd wear it as my wife." Gabrielle looked at the ring, then at the earnest face of the man she had come to love so deeply. The answer was as clear as the summer sky above them. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Adam." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms for a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. They were married on a perfect September day, with the aspen trees beginning to turn gold against the evergreen backdrop of the mountains. The ceremony took place at the Double C, with Charles performing the duties of best man and Martha serving as matron of honor. Gabrielle's students attended with their families, filling the ranch yard with joy and celebration. For her wedding day, Gabrielle wore a gown of ivory silk that Martha had ordered from Helena, with lace at the collar and cuffs that had once adorned Martha's own wedding dress. Adam, looking both uncomfortable and proud in a new suit, couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him on Charles's arm. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken with the certainty of two people who had found in each other the home they had always sought. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Adam's kiss was gentle yet full of promise, bringing cheers from the assembled guests. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with a feast spread under the cottonwoods, music from a fiddle and guitar, and dancing that continued until the stars came out. As the night grew cooler, Adam found Gabrielle sitting apart from the revelry, watching the festivities with a contented smile. "Mrs. Callahan," he said, the name still new and wonderful on his tongue. "May I have this dance?" Gabrielle placed her hand in his, allowing him to draw her to her feet. "You may, Mr. Callahan, now and always." They swayed together in the lantern light, wrapped in each other's arms and the promise of the future they would build together. Gabrielle rested her head against Adam's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Happy?" he asked softly, his breath stirring her hair. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "When I think of where I was a year ago and where I am now," she shook her head in wonder. Adam's arms tightened around her. "I meant what I said that day we met. You'll never carry your burdens alone again, not while I'm breathing." Gabrielle lifted her face to his, overwhelmed by the love she felt for this good, steadfast man. "Nor will you carry yours alone. That's what marriage means, isn't it? Sharing the load, whether it's joy or sorrow." "That's exactly what it means," Adam agreed, bending to claim her lips in a kiss that sealed their promise. Later that night, as they stood on the porch of their new home, the house Adam had been secretly building all summer while telling Gabrielle it was a new bunkhouse, he swept her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "Welcome home, Gabrielle Callahan," he said, his voice husky with emotion. Inside, he had prepared everything with careful attention to detail a fire laid in the hearth, fresh flowers on the table, and the bedroom arranged with new linens and curtains that Martha had helped him select. Gabrielle moved through the rooms in wonder, touching the furniture he had either built himself or ordered from as far away as Denver. "It's perfect," she said, turning to find him watching her with love plain on his face. "Absolutely perfect." Their first night as husband and wife was a tender discovery of each other. Adam's patience and gentleness erasing any lingering fears Gabrielle might have harbored. In his arms, she found not just passion but a profound sense of safety and belonging that healed wounds she had thought might never mend. As autumn deepened into winter, Gabrielle and Adam settled into married life with a joy that seemed to grow with each passing day. The school continued to thrive, with Adam building additional desks as new students joined. In the evenings, they would sit before the fire in their cozy home, reading aloud to each other or simply talking about their days. Christmas brought a special celebration, with the entire community gathering at the Double C for a feast and gift exchange. Gabrielle had organized her students to perform a nativity play, which was received with enthusiastic applause and more than a few proud tears from parents. That night, as they lay together in the warmth of their bed while snow fell softly outside, Gabrielle shared news she had been saving for this special day. "Adam," she whispered, taking his hand and placing it over her stomach, "I have a Christmas gift that couldn't be wrapped." His eyes widened in the dim light. "Are you saying?" Gabrielle nodded, her heart full to bursting with happiness. "We're going to have a baby, in early summer, Dr. Miller thinks." Adam's expression transformed from surprise to wonder to pure joy. He gathered her into his arms, pressing kisses to her hair, her eyelids, her lips. "A baby," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Gabrielle asked, though she could already see the answer in his shining eyes. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Adam said. "Overjoyed, blessed, terrified in the best possible way, all of those and more." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. Your mama and papa are waiting to meet you." The months that followed were filled with preparations and anticipation. Adam added a nursery to their home, painting it with scenes from the stories Gabrielle loved to tell her students. Martha knitted tiny garments, while the women from the neighboring ranches organized a baby shower that left Gabrielle overwhelmed with gifts and good wishes. Spring came early that year, bringing wildflowers and warm breezes that seemed to herald the new life growing within Gabrielle. She continued teaching until the end of May, when Martha insisted she rest for the final weeks before the baby's arrival. On a perfect June morning, with sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and meadowlarks singing outside, Gabrielle gave birth to a daughter. After hours of labor supported by Adam's steady presence and Martha's experienced help, she held their child in her arms, marveling at the tiny perfect features and the wisp of auburn hair that matched her own. "She's beautiful," Adam whispered, his finger caught in the baby's surprisingly strong grip. Just like her mother, tears of joy slipped down Gabrielle's cheeks as she looked from her daughter to her husband. "What shall we call her?" They had discussed names but hadn't settled on one, wanting to meet their child first. Adam studied the infant's face. "Hope," he suggested softly, "because that's what she is, the hope of our future, born from the love we found against all odds." "Hope Elizabeth Callahan," Gabrielle agreed, the name feeling right for this miracle they had created together. As summer flowed into autumn and then winter again, Hope grew into a happy, curious baby who brought endless joy to her parents and the extended family of the Double C. Gabrielle gradually returned to teaching, bringing Hope with her to the schoolhouse where the older children delighted in helping care for the baby during lessons. On Hope's first birthday, as friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate, Adam found Gabrielle standing on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and purple. He slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her close against his side. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Callahan." Gabrielle leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was just thinking about the day we met, how lost and afraid I was, and how you changed everything with a simple promise." Adam's brow furrowed slightly. "What promise was that? You said you'll never carry this alone again." Gabrielle turned in his arms to face him. "And you've kept that promise every day since." Adam's eyes softened with memory and love. "Best promise I ever made." Inside, their daughter's laughter rang out and Martha called that it was time to cut the cake. Gabrielle rose on tiptoe to kiss her husband, pouring all her gratitude and love into the gesture. "Shall we go in?" she asked when they finally parted. "Our family is waiting." Adam tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch as gentle as it had been that first day. "Our family," he repeated, the words holding all the wonder of a dream fulfilled. "I like the sound of that." Hand in hand, they walked back into the house, into the circle of love and belonging that they had built together from the broken pieces of their past, a testament to the healing power of compassion, courage, and the promise that some burdens were never meant to be carried alone. 5 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Gabrielle stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching as Adam taught their son, James, to ride his first pony. At 6 years old, Hope sat beside her, practicing her reading with the serious concentration that reminded Gabrielle so much of her husband. "Mama, look," James called, his 5-year-old face alight with pride as he guided the gentle pony in a circle. "I'm doing it, wonderful darling." Gabrielle called back, her heart swelling with love for her family. The Double C had prospered over the years, as had the school, which now had its own building in town and 2 additional teachers to help Gabrielle with the growing number of students. Adam had taken on more responsibility in managing the ranch alongside Charles, whose health had begun to fail in recent years. Martha joined Gabrielle on the porch, carrying a squirming 2-year-old Sarah, the latest addition to the Callahan family. "This one's determined to join her brother and Papa," Martha said with a laugh, handing the toddler to Gabrielle. "Just like her namesake," Gabrielle replied warmly. They had named their second daughter after Martha, whose kindness had been such a crucial part of their story. As Sarah settled in her lap, Gabrielle reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment of complete contentment. The scars of her past had faded, though they would never disappear entirely. But they had been transformed, like the land after a wildfire, renewed, stronger, more vibrant than before. Adam looked up from his lesson with James, catching Gabrielle's eye across the yard. The love in his gaze was as powerful as it had been on their wedding day, tempered now by years of shared joys and challenges, but no less profound. "I love you," he mouthed silently. "I love you too," she returned, knowing with absolute certainty that of all the lessons life had taught her, this was the most important, that even from the deepest wounds healing could come, that from the darkest moments light could emerge, and that sometimes the greatest gift was simply the promise that whatever came, you would never have to face it alone.